Welcome to A Writer's Mind podcast. My name is DelSheree. I think a lot of the questions that we get as writers is, how do you write a whole book? Where do your ideas come from? Things along that line. And it's always kind of a hard question to answer because being a creative person, there's just always a lot going on in your head, I feel like. And it's kind of a crazy place at times. So this is going to give readers and other writers a glimpse inside my mind and how I work through the process of writing a book. As scattered and crazy as it is sometimes, hopefully it will help someone else get themselves into a writing practice and feel like however they approach their writing process, it's good. If it works for them, we've all got our own journey to go on. This is something that I'm doing to try to get myself on a writing habit and actually get some writing done this summer. During the rest of the year, I am a English teacher, and during the school year I really struggle to write, especially this past year was my first year teaching public high school. I've taught college classes and private classes in the past, and this was just a completely new and crazy experience. So all of my mental power was kind of wrapped up in figuring how to get through my first year of teaching school. So it didn't leave a lot of room for writing. And now I'm trying to get back into the habit of writing after having taken some time off over the last, I guess, about 3 years with some just major stuff going on in my life. I went through a divorce and finishing a massive house project and selling that house to buy a new house for me and my kids, part of the divorce settlement, and just kind of all the general chaos that goes along with restarting your life in your late 30s. And figuring out what the heck you're doing. So kind of like this last year of teaching, I didn't have a lot of room in my brain or anything, really just my schedule, my time to put toward writing. So I'm really trying to focus. This is the first time I've ever had a significant amount of time off since since my kids got old enough that I went back to work and have been in school or pursuing various jobs and careers and trying to, again, figure out what I'm doing in life. Writing has always been a constant for me up until that point. It really gave me an outlet, helped me work through a lot, and it's something that I've missed the last couple of years and really want to bring that back into my life in a meaningful way. So this is my first kind of official day of being on summer break. It's Tuesday, May 28th, and yesterday doesn't count because it was a holiday. So even if I had been working, it would have been a holiday, so I wouldn't have been at work. So today is what feels like really my first day of summer where I can start kind of getting this writing practice into some sort of habit that I can follow for the rest of the summer. So I'm trying to be realistic about it. I know that it's very unlikely that I will write every single day. So my goal is to write Monday through Friday, to spend 30 minutes to an hour, kind of depending on how crazy the day is, and get some words down on paper and see how much progress I can make. I would love to finish a first draft before I have to go back to school early in August. But we'll see where it goes. My goal is at least to build a consistent writing practice that then I can hopefully take into the school year and not feel like I need to put it on hold for the whole school year until I can get my mind back into it. Those of you who maybe are struggling with the same thing, busy life, not enough time in the day, too many other mental, emotional distractions, whatever it is, maybe this will help. What I'm going to be doing is kind of just talking my way through what I accomplish each week and sharing some of that process, what I'm getting stuck on, what's working, how I'm doing on reaching my goals. Hopefully, I can be consistent in writing, but we'll see how that goes. My hope is to get a lot done and to make some progress on a book that I've been keeping in the back of my mind for years and just never really got around to it. So I'll give you an idea of what the book is about. This is the one I've been bouncing around several ideas and trying to decide what I wanted to focus on this summer. And I've decided that I'm going to go with, instead of one of the many half-finished projects I have or unfinished series, sorry to my readers, I feel like I need to start on a brand new project because after everything the last few years, I've done a lot of rethinking, rebuilding, reevaluating everything in my life. And a lot of that has to do with relationships and how I viewed relationships. And I've always had some element of romance in my writing. And a lot of that was based off of how I viewed relationships, what I saw growing up as a kid. I grew up Mormon, no longer a part of that religion, but a lot of that influenced my ideas about relationships. And also, I got married at 18, which is very young. I encourage young people to wait and get to know themselves a little bit more before taking on a partnership like that. But I was married, like I said, at 18, married for 19 years before asking for divorce. And that experience has really caused me to think about what relationships are, what they should look like, what's healthy, what's not. And so in a lot of that thinking, and also a lot has to do with having met my boyfriend, Chris, and he's amazing. And I've had just a completely different experience with being in a relationship than what I had most of my adult life. And so all of that combination has really changed how I think about romance, how I view relationships, and that's really kind of thrown off my writing in general. And so that has made it really hard to go back to a project that I either started several years ago or a series that I was in the middle of. And that doesn't mean I'm going to completely abandon those. I promise I will one day finish some of these series I have that are lingering in book purgatory. So I will get back to that. But I think right now I need to reset and figure out where my writing's at and what my writing interests are in this new space that I'm occupying since really starting over and rebuilding major parts of my life. I am going to be focusing on a supernatural-ish mystery series where there is a character who is basically non-corporeal. She is a soul who is assigned different humans to investigate, to figure out basically where their soul is and what they deserve after they pass on from mortal life. And I really love mysteries. I have a lot of fun reading them. They're kind of my get away from everything else pleasure. So I think that's part of why I wanted to focus on this idea that's, like I said, just kind of been lingering in the back of my mind for I don't even know how many years. So I'm hoping it'll be fun. It's something I want to write. It's engaging, and it will give me some room to just kind of explore my writing at this point in my life. So I sat down today after doing a bunch of yard work and running some errands and realizing that my garbage disposal is having some sort of problem, not working properly. And I was very tempted to say, I'm not going to have time to write today. I am going to figure out what's wrong with my garbage disposal and watch some YouTube videos and was like, oh gosh, I don't even know. I'm just getting the same stupid answers of press the reset button, which obviously wasn't helping because that was the first thing I did. But I really need to be able to figure out how to set aside some of those day-to-day problems, sit down and get some writing done. So I made that decision. I will have to warn my daughter not to use the garbage disposal before I can figure out what's wrong with it. But I did take about an hour and sat down and opened a blank document. I typed in untitled at the top because I have no idea what this book's going to be called yet. I tend to hit on something as I'm writing that becomes the title. So we'll see what I end up doing there. So I just started, untitled, name of the series, which I think I'm going to go with Karmic Investigation Mysteries. Again, we'll see. It'll come up for review as I continue to write. And I gave myself an hour to write so that I can go have dinner with Chris later and enjoy the rest of the evening before I do some freelance journalism tomorrow. So I got 821 words written, and I think a lot of it is stuff that I'm going to go back and rework later because it's feeling very explainy so far, which is fine because I'm still working out what details I want to share with the reader at the beginning because I don't know how this world operates yet. I'm still kind of thinking about what the rules are going to be. So I think most of that 821 words today is largely going to be reworked, rewritten at a later point in time as I narrow down. And there's my dogs barking. But as I narrow down kind of what I really feel like the reader needs to know at the beginning and what details are going to be important for me to either put out there or make hints at. And I found a few of those. I think as I was just writing, even those 821 words, I started getting some ideas about what are going to be some of those conflicts that I'm going to be introducing or hinting at right off the bat, such as I make a point of noting that there is a timeline that the character is under as far as finishing her investigation in a short amount of time, which is unusual. And it's putting some pressure on her. She doesn't have all the information and all the details she needs. But the reader is aware, okay, we've got this deadline going on. And I wasn't quite sure when I first started typing what the reason for the deadline was. And it kind of came to me toward the end of the hour when I was getting ready to stop writing. So I made some notes. We'll see if that changes and if I adjust that as I go. But for the time being, I kind of have an idea, which I won't give away right now, of why there's this deadline, why there's this pressure on the character to wrap this investigation up as quickly as possible. So that was helpful because I'm still, again, kind of figuring out what the story is. I'm totally pantsing this one and not outlining it ahead of time because I think that is just generally not how I work, and I want to just get some words down on paper and I'll go back and rework and fix it later. I did start to get some of those details into place, some ideas of where I want the rules to be for this world and who the character is. I think I'm going to need to work on developing her personality and her voice a little bit more. Like I said, it's a lot of exposition. I'd like to get things rolling a little bit more, but right now I'm kind of just feeling out who the character is and what she is trying to accomplish on a personal level while being involved in this world and these investigations. So, made some progress. Still tons of questions, not a lot that I have any clue about in the story so far. But I think maybe I'm going to go with the name Beatrix for the main character, but we'll see. I might decide to change that. I was getting really hung up on names and figuring out names for characters, names for the organizations, and all of that. But I tried to resist the urge to spend too much time thinking about that and just be willing to go back and change those things later. So that's kind of where I ended today. I am going to add to each weekly episode with a little bit more of my progress throughout the week, whether every day or just kind of every couple of days where I feel like I have something worth talking about. But for today and my first day of getting some summer writing done and trying to build this writing habit, that is where I'm going to sign off. All right, well, I'm back for day 2 of this, so Wednesday. And I ran into a few of the same problems that I did on Tuesday of kind of getting stuck on choosing names. I don't know why that is such a hard thing for me. I go back and forth with character names a lot. I tend to, once I find something I like, especially if it's like a family, going with a theme. So for the siblings in my main character's family, I kind of went with a botanical theme. So that made it a little bit quicker because I could search for more specific names. So the main character she's not the main character. She is the body that the main character, Beatrix, is inhabiting during her investigation. So I decided to go with the name Sage for her, and she has a younger brother whose name is Lyndon, and a younger sister whose name is going to be Camellia. So that helped me get some of the names. One of the names I asked my daughter, who was sitting next to me on the couch, said, what's a good name for a dad character who is kind of oblivious and uninvolved? And her suggestion was the dad from the Goldbergs. For anybody who's watched that, he's a great character. But when we looked up his name, because we couldn't remember, it was Murray. I don't think that name quite works. So we ended up going with the actor's name instead, which is Jeff. Again, I kind of got stuck working on some of those names. A few other things, I've really been trying to, if I need to stop and look something up, like really random facts, like the nickel content of silverware, which is not something I had ever thought about before, but it was kind of one of those things as I'm looking for ways to make this investigator character more unique. She brings up random bits of knowledge that she's acquired over the centuries that she's been doing these karmic investigations. And that was one of them. But one thing that has helped, I listened to a podcast episode this week of the Publish Her podcast by Alexa Bigwarf. And it was episode 126 on productivity and time management tips for authors with Stacey Ennis. And if this is something that you struggle with, check that episode out. She had a lot of really good advice about protecting your time, scheduling your writing, and just some smaller tips of like how to avoid the interruptions of like leaving your regular space or going somewhere where you don't have internet, things like that. And just, putting like placeholders in while you're writing if it's something that like, oh, I'm going to really need to do some research on this, or I don't know what that name should be. I'm just going to put, an X or a question mark or whatever. That was timely. I happened to listen to it just today, and then it was helpful to kind of get me more aware of some of the things that I do that waste time, because I'm trying to set this 1 hour block each day. When I write is kind of variable just because I'm trying to finish my yard, and most of today I spent either at a human trafficking conference that I was covering for our local newspaper, or actually writing the article for them and helping my daughter. I was trying to see if she wanted to do some freelance writing because she's trying to find a job this summer, and it's been a little slow going. So I was like, well, maybe you can do this and earn some money. So I did a lot of writing, but it wasn't necessarily writing that I wanted to do for my personal projects. I didn't count that as part of my writing time. So once I'm sitting down, I'm trying to be more aware of the things that take up a lot of time, and research can lead me down a lot of rabbit holes. So I'm trying to take that advice of just, if I can look something up in like 2 or 3 minutes, then I'll stop and just look it up, like, what is the nickel content of stainless steel silverware, and how does that make it varying degrees of nice, I guess. So there were a couple of things that I did stop and research, but there were a couple of other things that were in the back of my mind, like, I'm really going to have to dig into that a little bit more, and just kind of making a note of that, because I don't want to spend my 1 hour of writing time looking stuff up and then getting sucked into never-ending, YouTube videos or random articles on whatever it is. So that was something that I really focused on, just taking those very short, quick breaks. Also limiting distractions. I've always been more of a sit on the couch, have a baseball game playing, or try to do a little bit of writing while I'm watching something with the kids. And this time I felt that compulsion of like, oh, me and my daughter are just sitting on the couch. We just taken the dogs for a walk and come back. It was like, I can probably pay attention and write while we watch something. But having that time limit set really kind of pushed me to be like, no, I need to focus for this hour and just write, not try to do 2 things at once, which I'm really bad about doing. And so I didn't say like, hey, if you want to watch something, go ahead and turn it on. I'm going to keep writing while we're here. I just got my computer, I sat and I wrote, and this was in the evening. And I will say that it was still a little bit harder to focus being out in a public space in the house where my dogs can come every few minutes and want pets and loves and climb on top of me. Because yesterday I wrote in my room, which is where my desk and / office space is, where, yes, I could still hear my dogs whining at me occasionally, but they weren't coming in to the room because we have a gate to block off the bedrooms. So I think I need to still make more of an effort to be in a quiet, distraction-free as much as possible place when I'm writing, so I can really be productive in that time. So I'm going to work on doing that and trying to get my writing hour in during the day, so then I can, spend that time to relax a little bit more and enjoy the evening with my family. But I did feel like I still was able to accomplish a lot. I ended up getting 1,402 words written, and that finished off chapter 1 for me. So again, I think this first chapter is really gonna need some work once I get a better sense of the characters and where I'm taking the story, because it's a little bit too much exposition. I'm just kind of rambling my way through exploring the characters' personalities and who they are and what's going to be important and what's not. So I expect that this first chapter will look completely different by the end of this project. But I'm trying to save that other than maybe doing like a quick reread of what I wrote the day before so I can get back into the zone. I'm really going to try to not stop and go back and edit each time. Because again, like I don't want that hour that I've set aside to be taken up by editing either. I just really want to focus on writing because I can work on all of that later and, set aside separate time for that. So a couple more lessons learned, some better ideas of, going to a quieter space without dog and other things interrupting me, keeping my research, or hopefully I don't have too many more names to come up with, keeping that to, just a couple minutes rather than wasting too much of my time, looking at list after list or article after article. So helpful, at least, to have heard that Publish Harder episode with some tips that helped me with my writing today. And I'm looking forward to jumping back in and getting some more done tomorrow. All right, so day 3, Thursday, I didn't get to writing till kind of the end of the afternoon, right before dinner, which was fine because I kind of had the house to myself at that point. So it was a little quieter. I sat up at the table, even though I was still out, where the dogs could come hang out with me. It's kind of their nap time, so they just chilled out mostly. They get more excited and want to play when I'm sitting on the couch. So sitting at the table worked well to still be out where I can be around the dogs when they want to have some company, but I was able to get stuff done. So I got about 1,059 words written, so maybe about half or 3/4 of the way through chapter 2. And I really had to resist the urge to go back and work on some things in chapter 1. Like I said earlier, I want to keep that editing portion separate from my writing time so I can be more productive. But I did notice as I was going through and kind of getting started on chapter 2, I've built this world where Beatrix, the investigator, takes over Sage's body. But Sage's consciousness is kind of like wrapped up in this psychic ball. So she's not like completely unaware of what's going on. She can still have some low-level reactions that Beatrix can feel, and that actually helps her because it kind of helps her gauge when other people are maybe telling the truth or when Sage gets scared or is interested, so she can use these reactions to help her in her investigation, but she's kind of got to get to know what each of the reactions mean and what they're indicating, and that happens just kind of the longer she's in the body that she's occupying. So I kind of realized that I'd introduced that idea in chapter 1. Then throughout the rest of chapter 1, there's a scene where the family's at breakfast and the reader is introduced to each of the family members and kind of how strange and dysfunctional they are. But I don't actually use any of that to prompt reactions from Sage's trapped consciousness. And I kind of realized that as I came to a similar point in chapter 2 where Sage's 2 best friends are introduced. And I was like, oh yeah, she would be reacting to this conversation. She needs to have some sense of whether the friends are being honest, or I have a scene where the boyfriend's kind of obnoxiously forward in his level of PDA, public display of attention, where he's kind of tucking his fingers under the waistband of her coat and kind of making some suggestive movements. And Beatrix gets the sense from Sage's consciousness that even though she plays along with it, she really does not like this behavior, but she's keeping it to herself. Like the boyfriend seems completely oblivious that he's been making her uncomfortable with all of this. And so that kind of prompted me oh yeah, I should be doing this with the parents and the siblings and letting Sage kind of react to that to give Beatrix a better indication of what the relationship is with the other members of her family. And I briefly considered do I go back and fix that now or just continue with writing chapter 2? And I ultimately decided that since I know chapter 1 is going to need a lot of revision, I didn't want to take the time today to go back and fix it. So I just kind of made myself a note that I need to do that in the future. And I think I'll wait to go back and rework chapter 1 until I feel like I have a good sense of the world and the characters and what I want to introduce to the reader in that first chapter. I think that's going to be more efficient and effective than going back working on it now, just, halfway through chapter 2. So I resisted that urge and moved on. I did come up with a few other things that I hadn't thought about yet. Her friend needs to have an alibi for the time, the investigation that Beatrix is looking into, basically, was Sage responsible for the disappearance and possibly even death of a fellow classmate who is currently missing in town. So she's trying to figure out, did she have a role in that or not? And chapter 2 opens with the friend kind of finding her and commenting on how there are posters up all over the school about this missing girl, Arya, and how it's just kind of like weirding her out of like every time she turns around, she's seeing Arya's face on the wall. And so I needed this friend to have an alibi because I can't really explain why. I don't really want her to be the focus of the investigation. I think that's just a little too easy to bring her into it. So I want her to be unaware of whatever the truth of this incident ends up being, which made me think, okay, I've said that they're in high school, they're seniors. I chose the setting of Denver because it's a place I'm familiar with. It's big enough that a young girl could go missing. And yes, there's going to be concern, but it's not like the entire town's going to shut down to look for her like they might in a small town. So it's a big deal to this school community, but not necessarily to the larger Denver metro area, even though like it's on the news, people are aware of it. But yeah, not everyone is focused in on this missing girl. So it was kind of like, okay, well, what point of the school year are we in? What season is it? Is this girl playing a sport? And I kind of decided I wanted it to be toward the end of the school year where things are starting to wrap up. This could be a point where, they're all getting close to leaving the area, maybe leaving this investigation, the focus on this missing girl, and moving on with their lives. So I had to think, if it's the end of the year, what sports are still going on? And so I settled on track for that because I know a bunch of my kids were out for track at the end of this school year. So I think that will work out pretty well. I'll figure out how else to play with that. And then the boyfriend, I'm a little undecided on still, whether he's going to be an active participant in the disappearance of this girl, or if maybe he just is aware of maybe what the truth is. He's definitely not going to be completely blameless, but I haven't yet decided what level of culpability he's going to have and whether or not he's a decent person or if he's just kind of young and stupid and oblivious and not really recognizing how some of his behaviors might be considered something that makes people uncomfortable, maybe borderline abusive in a way. So I'm kind of getting a sense of who this character is. I named him Kendall, and I actually went with that off of the character from Succession. So maybe kind of cluing me into where my mind's going with this character. But Kendall is a very complex, very interesting character in Succession. And I think I'm hoping to kind of do something similar with him in this, just really trying to play on that age and how many influences you have into your behavior and your thoughts and your patterns and trying to figure out who you are. And he doesn't really know yet, but he's making some not so great decisions, I think, at times. Whether that's the full range of who he is, we'll see as we go. I tend to develop my characters as I write them organically and just seeing kind of where they go and then going back and fixing stuff early in the book, which is usually something I have to do because you don't write them consistently when you don't know who they are at the first. So likely I will come back to this chapter as well and, make some changes to him particularly and tweak what's going on with him. Interesting day of writing. I got a few things figured out, kind of added a few more questions to my list of who and what and when and all of that, and figuring out the characters and the world a little bit more. I think the rest of this chapter will be the interaction with a teacher who is either going to, I think, prove helpful in solving the mystery or end up being maybe either a confidant or a roadblock. I'm a little undecided. Said we'll kind of see where it goes when I sit down to get some writing done tomorrow. So this is my last entry for this first week of this writing challenge. It took me until Sunday at almost 11 p.m. to fit some writing in because I was trying to get some yard work done and get things prepped to have some rocks delivered, hopefully finish up my ridiculous backyard project to keep my dogs from being so constantly filthy and messing up the house. Yeah, it took, like I said, a little longer than I'd planned to hit my 5th day of writing for this week. And I only got in about 40 minutes because it was 11 o'clock at night and I needed to go to bed. But I did manage to get in 776 words. It was a section where the main character, Beatrix, is kind of still in this first day of experiencing the high school life of Sage and starting to get a sense of who might know something about the missing girl that she's investigating, Aria. And so we've got the two best friends, and like I said in the earlier section, kind of still debating on how much each of them is going to be involved. And I brought in just kind of an unexpected character as I'm still trying, I guess, to figure out what all Beatrix knows, like how much information she was given and where there are gaps in her information. And so I decided with this one, she's going to walk into first period and she doesn't have complete knowledge of what Sage's typical day looks like. So she kind of has to guess on where she's supposed to sit. And she kind of just scans the room for somebody who looks like someone Sage might associate with and sits down next to this boy, and it's an incorrect guess, and the boy is kind of like stunned that she's sitting there talking to him, so she makes up an excuse of, hey, can I borrow your laptop charger? Which is something with my students every single day, every single class, someone needed to borrow a laptop charger. So I figured that would be a good enough excuse for her to have approached someone she wouldn't normally talk to. And she gets lucky in a sense that this boy knows something about these posters that have been put up all over the school about Aria being missing. And he kind of reveals to her he's a little overly eager to share information with Sage, as he's a little, I guess, kind of starstruck by this pretty popular girl unexpectedly talking to him, and mentions that his sister is on the student council and they are the ones responsible for putting up all the posters. So this kind of gives me an idea of where to go next, and this first clue is going to kind of set stage on her next experience of trying to figure out some details. So still haven't quite decided how she's going to make her way through the student body, finding clues without her friends thinking she's just kind of lost it, because she still wants to stay incognito, basically. Like, she doesn't want to draw any attention to the fact that Sage is not acting as she normally would, but she is on a mission to discover the truth about what happened to Aria and whether Sage is involved or not. So I think some of those details I'm still kind of working out in my head a little bit and trying to figure out how it's all going to come together. But with this one just being kind of a completely pantsed first draft, it'll go where it's going to go. I'm sure I'll have to go back and fix plenty of things, especially once I figure out how it's all going to play out. I know this is when I started writing my Eliza Carlisle series, I did actually, for the most part, pants that one as well, and then released it. It was kind of a rushed situation that involved the formerly available Kindle worlds and all of that. And I actually ended up going back later and completely rewriting the ending, which I had to kind of put a note in the beginning of the book, like, if you happen to have read this before, there's been a change to the ending because it just didn't end up quite working out as much as possible. So yes, ideally, when writing a mystery, it's best to plan things out ahead of time, but that's just not how I'm working on this one. Because I just need to get into a writing practice and get stuff done, I'm going to work with what is likely going to be a first draft with a lot of problems, and I will spend the time going back and fixing them at a later time. Even though I know this is going to cause me more work in the end, I'm just going to see where getting some words down on paper is going to take this story and figure out what to do with it. So I have an idea of where I'm going to start with the next section, which I'll get back to tomorrow on Monday. But for now, at least, I've gotten through just about 2 chapters, and so far I would say My favorite line, I usually really work on those first lines of chapter 1 to make sure that they're attention getting. And I think, like, I'm okay with the first line, but I think I might end up going back and reworking it. But my favorite line so far was kind of about where I stopped on that first day and kind of took my break on Tuesday. And that line, I'll share that one with you guys. Hopefully you guys think it's a good line too. Manipulative bitches had a way of commanding attention they didn't otherwise deserve. So that kind of gives you a sense of both Beatrix's personality and her attitude toward this case in general, which she's not super thrilled about being assigned, and her impression of Sage as she's getting started. And we'll see where both of them end up at the end of this. My final word count for the week ended up at 4,068 words. On to next week.